Hey everybody, welcome back to Ravenstead. It's time for another build. We need a bridge for the gaming table, so I've got two pieces of foam here cut out. It'll be the base for either end of the bridge, and it'll be a wooden bridge structure. So we're going to build that up out of all these pieces of little foam here. So why don't you watch over my shoulder, and let's get something made. Alright, let's get into this build. I'm going to use a craft knife through this. I don't cut myself, so don't worry about that. I've got the two halves of the bridge landing, and that squiggly cut that I made in the middle, I did that with a Proxxon hot wire cutter. You could do it with a craft knife too. So I'm just going to carve these up into kind of a rocky organic shape, adding a little bit of layer there, and then I'll go over it with a bit of rolled up aluminum foil. That'll give those factory surfaces a little texture. And then hit the edges with a brass brush. That gives us a nice striated stone look to the edges. Kind of roughs things up a little bit. So that's one, and we'll get the other one done. And then we'll build our bridge. Ta-da! Just kidding. So I'm going to texture up all these strips of foam with a wire brush to give them a grained wood look. And then we'll start building the bridge. So I'm going to build a couple of supports for the main beams. These will go on either of the little islands, the landings. Just hot glue those up. And then hot glue them to the base. If you do get globs of hot glue squirting out from underneath here and there, we can always hide them later with a little bit of flocking or foliage. So I was poking the ends of the timber there with the brass brush to give them a little bit of in-grain texture, but I ended up hiding that with joinery, so it didn't really matter, but it's just the little details. This thing was really fiddly at first. I'll end up adding a little bit more structure underneath the bridge just to kind of stiffen things up, and it makes it look a little bit more believable. Had a little gap under that timber where it didn't quite meet the terrain, so I just threw a little board under there. This bridge is kind of slapdash anyway. Not the best engineer was building this. That would be me. So those are the main beams of the bridge. And then I put in an underpinning there, a couple of posts and some braces. And I am learning to undercoat things that I'm not going to get to later on. So we need those shadows under there. We don't necessarily need much detail in the way of dry brushing and painting, but we do need to get it darkened up. So I'm going to clad the deck of the bridge. I've got little strips of foam cut out. That's a nice pile of lumber there. And just hot gluing those a little bit at a time. You know, I've got the glue gun set on a pretty high temperature, not enough to really melt into the foam, but stay molten long enough for me to work with. But I don't like to get too far ahead of myself. Hot glue is kind of hard to get off of foam if it hardens. And you can, you know, be as exact or as random as you like. I kind of like a little rougher look to the terrain. Not everybody's a brilliant carpenter. Alright, so then we'll go back and black bomb the rest of this thing with a mixture of Mod Podge and black latex paint. Get everything coated. This really helped stiffen up the piece too, because it was still a little bit flimsy. The bases, in retrospect, maybe I should have made those a little thicker, so I could have added a couple of wood screws to the base to give it some weight, but it's not bad. We'll do a little dry brushing here. This is just like a medium brown. And I'm trying to preserve some of that black undertone. And this can go over all the wood. So I've been working on this technique, trying to speed up the builds a little bit. Here's a light brown. This particular color is called cinnamon. So it's got kind of that yellow undertone. I like it. And if you get a little bit too much somewhere here or there, just rub it off with your finger. You can use a wet paper towel. Whatever works, don't worry about it. dry brush the stone areas. And again, you can see I'm not being particularly careful. And then a lighter color, almost a beige, is going to go over everything. I like it super dry on the wood. I don't want that to look too frosty. And then we'll kind of pull it all together with some washes. So the first wash I'm going to use is burnt umber acrylic ink mixed with water. I put a couple of drops of jet dry in there, like you would use in a dishwasher. That breaks down the surface tension, makes it flow, you get less bubbles. And then a little bit of the green wash. This is a bright green mixed with water. And I just put that on everything. I kind of imagine this bridge being, well, since it's over water, being kind of moldy, mossy. And then a little Vallejo rust wash, straight out of the bottle. I've noticed in some of my previous builds, having watered it down, it really disappears almost to nothing. So I'm using it just straight out of the bottle here. I wanted to give it a look like there were some old rusty nails holding those planks down. Now I just put a little bit of PVA glue here, there, and everywhere, and sprinkled a little flocking on. Now we need to plant some bushes. Somebody suggested my builds could use a little bit more color, so we're doing some flowers on this one, and our shrubs. Whoop. There we go. Don't worry about it. Sometimes you make mistakes, just move on. Cover them up with more flocking, some lichen, mossy planks. I bet the bees like those flowers. That lichen is pretty bright. I don't know how I feel about that just yet. There we go. Last little bit of foliage. And let me give you guys a look. I'll spin it for you. There it is, the wooden bridge. Quick little build, but necessary. I really needed this for river crossings on the game table. Our troll would have to be kind of short to hang out underneath there, but that's alright. There's the rotten plank. You could work that into being a trap on the bridge. A little you shall not pass moment. Hey, leave me a comment, guys. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching the video. I appreciate it.